Hey guys, it's Bella. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are all having an amazing day today. Today we're going to be covering another Mystery Monday case from a hotel room because we've just moved to London, so we don't even have a rental yet. Like, we knew finding a rental here would be difficult, but we didn't realize it would be this difficult. We've seen like 7 so far and none of them have been okay. So it's been a bit of a struggle. So we're filming in a hotel room. I don't even have like plugs to plug hair tools in, so this is what we're dealing with at the moment. I mean, hopefully we find a rental soon so we can get back to business as usual. It's been very chaotic moving overseas, but I've been vlogging the whole thing as well, so there will be a vlog coming. So before we get into today's case, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Casetify, who I think needs no introduction by this point. You guys know how much I love Casetify. I have used no other phone cases on my phone for years now. I swear by Casetify cases, and I have been using their clear case at the moment, which is just, it's a classic, you know? You can't beat a classic clear case. Honestly, I haven't used clear cases in so long because, you know, they go yellow and really gross really easily, so I feel like you always have to repurchase them. But Casetify has new UV Defender technology which prevents them from yellowing, so they last forever. They've also been drop tested for drops of up to 6.6 feet, so they're still really protective despite being super slim without any raised edges, and the buttons are still so easy to press. I hate when you put on a case and you have to really dig in to the buttons to make them work, but these buttons work like you didn't have a case on, basically. And they're also MagSafe compatible and made from 65% recycled and plant-based materials. So if you guys do want to check out the clear cases, or any Casetify cases for that matter, you can go to casetify.com/Bella to get 15% off your order, and I will leave that link and all of the information in the description down below. And let's go ahead and get into today's case. So Lauren Hugelmaier was born on the 9th of June in 1988 in Los Angeles, California, to parents Dale and Lori Hugelmaier. And I'm not sure if they were living in LA at the time or if that was just where she was born, but she was raised in Kentucky alongside with her 2 sisters, Brianna and Beth. And the whole family was really close. They had a great upbringing. It was just a really loving household, and it was also a really traditional family from what I read, and they were quite religious as well. And while the whole family was really close, Lauren had a particularly special bond with her father Dale and her sister Beth. Her and Beth would share all of their secrets, and they just had a really close sisterly relationship. While Lauren was in Kentucky, she was attending middle school and she was classmates with this boy named Matthew Phelps, and he ended up leaving school to go to another school in Kentucky, and Lauren eventually moved to Raleigh, which is in North Carolina, with her family, and she graduated from Swain County High School in 2007 and went on to study at Appalachian State University. Her and Matthew wouldn't reconnect until their 20s, right? So they became friends again when he reached out to her through Instagram. I think he probably sent her a DM or something, but it wasn't a super close relationship to start off with because he was still in Kentucky, she was still in Raleigh, so there was still an 8-hour drive between them. Eventually they did end up getting into a long distance relationship, and Matthew was just all about Lauren. He was really into her. He went out to visit her a few times before eventually he just fully moved to Raleigh to be with her. They were infatuated with each other. They were in love, and the whole family was really supportive of the relationship, Lauren's family, except for her father Dale. I'm not sure exactly why he didn't like Matthew. I guess, you know, he's a dad, and dads are just very protective over their daughters, and, you know, he and Lauren did have a really close relationship, so maybe it was just a don't mess with my daughter type of thing, but he was definitely very skeptical. And it's good to be cautious, but I think Dale went a little bit beyond that, which makes me feel like there must have been something off about Matthew for him to really not be into him, you know? But despite his personal feelings on Matthew, he was still really supportive of Lauren, and he just wanted her to be happy because obviously she was very happy with Matthew. Matthew and Lauren are both in their mid-20s by this point. They're looking to settle down, I guess, looking for something a little more serious. I mean, you would expect, because Matthew moved hundreds of miles over to Raleigh just to be with Lauren. So I think that's why, you know, Dale, despite what he felt, just wanted to be there and to support Lauren and this relationship that she was clearly having a good time with. Now, obviously, all relationships come with their trials and tribulations, and no relationship is completely smooth sailing. But after a little while of dating, they're having a board game at Lauren's parents' house, and Matthew just kind of drops this bombshell that he had already had a failed marriage previously, which, you know, it's not that big of a deal that he had a marriage that didn't work out, but it's just weird that he waited so long to mention it to anyone, especially to his girlfriend. And then I think it's also weird that, you know, after so long of not telling or not really being upfront about your previous relationships, you just drop it over a board game. It's just kind of weird. And I think it was kind of, you know, Dale's like, I knew I had a reason to be skeptical because they're still really young. They're in their mid-20s. So I guess it is a little bit of a red flag to have been divorced by this time. I mean, especially from a father's perspective. Obviously, there were a lot of questions for Matthew about this previous failed marriage, but he managed to sweet talk everyone, and everyone, I guess, kind of just like let it slide and got past it and thought, you know, it's okay. But I will just say, like, I think it's a little bit bizarre that he didn't even tell Lauren privately before telling her whole family over a game night. It just seems very messy and just like a weird way to go about it. So in 2015, Lauren and Matthew ended up getting engaged, and they had their wedding the following year, and they looked like a really sweet couple. Lauren was really big into Instagram, and she loved sharing everything about their lives. She loved showing Matthew off and loved showing off their relationship. And from the outside, you know, they looked like the perfect couple. Both of them were really big Star Wars fans, so much so that he even had some Star Wars themed things at their wedding, which I think is so cute to have something in a relationship that both people are so passionate about that you can kind of incorporate it into your wedding. And, you know, everyone around them, friends and family, thought the same thing. They just thought they were a really great match, you know, a match made in heaven. Now, before we get any further, I want to give you a little bit of a backstory on Matthew, because I feel like we haven't really spoken about him or his upbringing or anything. And unfortunately, his upbringing was not as smooth sailing as Lauren's. Honestly, I couldn't find a whole lot of information on his upbringing, to be honest, but his mother only really looked after him occasionally, and his father wasn't in the picture at all, which kind of left the task of raising Matthew exclusively to his grandparents, which obviously is not the worst case scenario because his grandparents were responsible enough to take him into their care. But, you know, it's obviously not always what the kid wants. He built a lot of resentment against his parents and the whole situation because, you know, his mother remarried a bunch of times and was sort of in and out of the role of caretaker. And I think all of these struggles he went through as a child led him to start abusing drugs and alcohol in high school. He kind of got involved with the wrong crowd. He ended up going down a pretty dark path and became dependent on drugs, specifically cough syrup. If you aren't familiar in the way in which cough syrup can be used as a drug, I mean, it's just kind of like any other medication or drug. If you take too much of it, you can feel high and it can be very addictive. Matthew's addiction was so bad that his grandparents actually decided to intervene. They pulled him out of the school that he was going to, and they sent him to a much stricter Christian school. And I mean, I don't know if this helped his drug use, but it definitely helped him in terms of the fact that like his grades got better. He did well in school. He ended up graduating school and also went on to go to college. So from the outside, it looked like things were on the up and up for Matthew. Then obviously, as you know, he ended up reaching out to Lauren again. They got acquainted. He moved to Raleigh and they got married, and that's kind of where we left off. Everything was going great for them. But as we know, relationships and marriages are not all roses all of the time, and there was a lot of tension in the marriage, and there were a few key issues, which I think most of them stemmed from Matthew's sort of poor decision making and also a lot of interference from his mother. One major incident that happened actually that, you know, obviously Lauren was pretty pissed off about is that on the night of Matthew and Lauren's engagement party, Matthew's mother attended and she wore a white dress. I mean, who does that? And look, to give her the benefit of the doubt, maybe she like didn't know the rules or whatever, but like if you don't know the rules of what to wear to an engagement party, like she could have asked her son, she could have Googled it. It just seems, you know, that mixed with kind of everything else we know about Matthew's mother, that she was maybe a bit of a narcissist. She wanted the attention to be on her, and that's probably the reason that her and Lauren were never really able to foster a close relationship. And Lauren as well, I think, she probably didn't kick up a big stink about this on the engagement night because she just kind of wanted Matthew to be able to spend some time with his mum, because obviously she wasn't there a lot from him or for him growing up. But it definitely left, you know, a sour taste in her mouth. I mean, it really does seem like Matthew and Lauren had a great and loving relationship before they got married, but just after the marriage, you know, a lot of cracks started appearing in the relationship. There were sort of a lot of issues that started coming out of the woodwork. Lauren was extremely driven and she was always working to provide for her and Matthew. So she worked as an auditor, she also worked at the daycare of her local church, and it's reported that she occasionally worked multiple jobs at a time just to keep her and Matthew afloat, because Matthew, on the other hand, he didn't like to work. He was constantly leaving jobs, finding excuses. He could just not keep stable employment, and that was really hard on Lauren, you know, being the main breadwinner, like doing all of this work, putting her all into trying to keep them afloat, whereas he was just kind of really not putting in the same amount of effort. And also, for somebody who could not keep a stable job and did not want to work, he sure knew how to spend money. And if it was his own money, you know, that's all fair and well and good, but it wasn't. You know, he went as far as to take money out of he and Lauren's savings so that he could go and buy things that they just couldn't afford. You know, as I mentioned, they both loved Star Wars, so they really wanted to make a trip and go to Disneyland, and they were saving to be able to go to Disneyland, but every time they got close to their kind of saving goals so that they could go on this trip, he would go and blow all of the money on himself. And as I'm sure you can imagine, this created a lot of tension in the relationship. They were fighting a lot. It was just like a really tumultuous relationship. So it was just a complete 180 of the couple they were before they got married. And this, you know, this can't be proven, but there are kind of rumors and inklings that Matthew also might have been unfaithful to Lauren in their marriage. There was one incident that was referenced often where Matthew went over to hang out with their neighbor, a woman named Valerie. Lauren was at home cooking dinner for her and Matthew, and Matthew texted her and basically said, you know, eat without me, I'm having way too much fun with Valerie. Sorry? I mean, I just cannot imagine being Lauren at home, getting that text, you've made a dinner for yourself and your husband, and he says, sorry, I'm gonna hang out with this woman that just moved in next door. Like, I'm having way too much fun with her. Why would I want to come home and eat dinner with you that you've spent all evening cooking for me? Not to mention, I just don't understand why, like, he wouldn't have invited Lauren to go and hang out with him and Valerie, or even invited Valerie over to eat dinner with him and Lauren. It just makes no sense. Like, it's very suspicious and also very hypocritical, because Matthew would absolutely not let anything like that slide if the roles were reversed. In fact, there was like, he had this made up scenario in his head that there was a guy at the church that had a crush on Lauren and he was not okay with it. He was like paranoid about it, and it's like, it was a completely made up scenario, mind you. There was no guy at the church. There was obviously probably men at the church, but there wasn't like this scenario going on that he had made up in his head. And I guess the fact that he's paranoid about Lauren potentially cheating on him, probably, you know, the insecurity is coming from within, because he's most likely doing something of the same nature, and so that's the only reason he would worry that she's doing something as well. Now, eventually Matthew decided to pull his head out and try and, you know, get some direction in his life. He enrolled in college again, and he also decided to become a pastor at the church, which obviously Lauren is really religious. She grew up really religious, so this was amazing for her. She was super excited about it. I'm not sure like how religious Matthew was up until this point or before his relationship with Lauren, but to Lauren it kind of looked like this was the light at the end of the tunnel and things were finally starting to look up for them, but unfortunately things took a very dark turn. On the 1st of September in 2017 at about 1 a.m, Matthew placed a 911 call where he admitted to stabbing Lauren to death. She was 29 years old at the time and she had her whole life ahead of her, and this, you know, little man with absolutely no redeeming qualities cut her life short and took her from all of the people, all of the friends and family in her life that loved her. I'm gonna play Matthew's 911 call for you now, but I just want to preface this by saying at this point during this 911 call, he was claiming that this was an accident and that he did this while he was dreaming. It's also been edited because I think like at the time they were concealing his identity because they didn't know who the killer was or hadn't released who the killer was, but we now know that it was Matthew that placed this call.
I think I killed my...
What do you mean by that? What happened?
I had a dream, and then I turn on the lights and she's dead on the floor.
How?
I have blood all over me, and there's a bloody knife on the bed, and I think I did it.
Later on in the call, he also admits that he had taken more than the recommended dose of cough syrup in an effort to get high, and he kind of used this as an excuse as to why he was acting so delirious, as an excuse as to why he killed his own wife.
I took more medicine than I should have.
What medicine did you take?
I took Corseed, cough and cold, Corseed, HPT, cough and cold, because I know it can make you feel good, so a lot of times I can't sleep at night.
And I'm not sure if this is the same drug use that stemmed from high school, if he had been using this entire time up until this point from high school, or if he had maybe started experimenting again at a later time or relapsed at a later time. Like, I don't want to speculate here because I really don't know the facts of how long he was using drugs for, but there is the possibility that he never, got off drugs. And it could also explain the reason why he really didn't want to work ever. After the 911 call, police arrived on the scene very quickly. I mean, I think Matthew was still on the phone when they arrived at the house, and they did everything they could to try and save Lauren, but unfortunately she was pronounced dead at the hospital. Lauren's autopsy later revealed that she was stabbed 123 times, so I don't think there's any excuse he can give, delirious dream state, whatever, that can justify that sort of, this is a crime of pure hatred. To stab someone, like, it's such a personal crime. You have to be so up close and personal, and he sat there and stabbed this woman that he vowed to love, that he vowed to protect 123 times. He made a promise to her family that he was going to love and protect her for the rest of his life, and he did the exact opposite. And I just think it really shows what a deranged human being he is, if you can even call him a human being. So when police began their investigation, they started by cordoning off the crime scene, and they, from first impressions, from a surface level, they said something looked off. It looked like it had maybe been staged. They said there was like a knife that had been neatly placed on the bed, and there had also been a bottle of cough syrup that had just been like neatly placed on the bathroom vanity, which the reason police thought this looked staged, I mean, it just looked like it had been put there to maybe back up his story that he was in this like delirious cough syrup induced state. I mean, honestly, it kind of just seems at this point like he's using the cough medicine as an excuse or something to, take the blame off himself. Like, oh, I was on cough medicine, I was high, I didn't mean to do it. Like, it's the cough medicine that made me do it. Like, that just seems like an excuse, which also is just not a good excuse. It's like saying, I drank too much alcohol and killed my wife. Like, you still deserve to rot in jail. Drinking alcohol or taking cough syrup does not make you kill your wife. Another thing is, like, when emergency services arrived, he was really clean. Like, there was not a drop of blood on him, which, stabbing someone 123 times, you were going to be drenched in blood spatter. So it seemed like, he was in the right state of mind to go and have a shower and clean himself up and stage this scene before calling 911. It doesn't seem like someone who's in this kind of drug-induced cough syrup state, like, oh my God, like, I've woken up and this has happened and now I need to call 911. Like, if that was really the true story, you wouldn't have gone to clean yourself up before. Like, you would be in such a state of shock. And he clearly was not. So the police officers on the scene took him into custody right there on the spot, and they charged him with murder shortly after. His first court appearance was on the 5th of September, so not even a week after Lauren's murder, and Matthew was charged with murder, and he was ordered to be held in jail without bond, and he was facing the death penalty or life in prison with no parole. Now, something that came out in the investigation is that Lauren had actually expressed some concerns about Matthew and their relationship in the lead up to her murder. Nothing that would have made them concerned that he was going to do what he did, like that he was going to murder her, but she expressed concerns that he was controlling and basically just expressed, dissatisfaction in the relationship, and that she had actually thought about leaving him. During the investigation, police were also trying to find a motive because nobody had any clue as to why he would have wanted to do this. No one had any clue as to what could have made him kill Lauren. And one major clue that they found was a private Instagram that Matthew had. It's a private account, but the police were able to get access to it, and they found posts which Matthew made talking about satanic subject matter, and he also posted a bunch of photos that were from the movie American Psycho, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's about a serial killer. It was clear that he had this weird obsession with American Psycho. He even posted photos on this private Instagram of himself dressed up as Patrick Bateman. But the real nail in the coffin was a post that he made on this private Instagram the night before he murdered Lauren. And it was captioned, "Everyone thinks I'm a serial killer." And then there was a hashtag at the end of that which said, "Found an angel to kill." It's just such a heartbreaking situation for Lauren's family because not only was, their daughter, their sibling murdered and in such a horrific way, but this Instagram kind of left them thinking what they could have done to save her, even though there is no way on this earth anyone could have predicted this. Like, Dale definitely had his suspicions about Matthew, but I don't think there's anything that could have indicated that this is what was going to happen. There was a television interview that Lauren's father Dale did where he said that he truly believed that Matthew had planned this whole thing from the get-go. He also said, and I quote, "I think about it every day, what I did wrong, what I missed. Till this day, I just regret not knowing or keeping my eyes open and watching." Which, it's devastating. It's devastating to hear him thinking there was something he could have done and almost putting a little bit of blame on himself when there was nothing he could have done. There were no outward signs that Matthew was this much of a psycho. Some people are just evil, like evil human beings, and Matthew is one of those people. So Matthew's murder trial began in late 2018, and as far as trials go, it was pretty straightforward. Prosecutors displayed, quite a lot of evidence against him, including his secret Instagram and the 911 call he made. They also referenced the troubles that Matthew and Lauren were having in their relationship, the issues with him not working, spending all their money, and then the excessive jealousy and potential infidelity, which was mostly fueled by Matthew and his paranoia. I think this may have actually come out after the trial, but Matthew's ex-wife actually came forward and said that infidelity and money issues were the reason that their marriage also failed. He apparently cheated on her multiple times and then had the same sort of spending issues that he did in his relationship with Lauren. Matthew and Lauren's apartment was subject to a luminol test, and they found traces of blood everywhere, but particularly in the bathroom. So it was clear that Matthew had tried to clean up the crime scene, which I think just goes to show that this was premeditated. It wasn't some drug-fueled state. I know I've said that a million times, but just all of the evidence points to it. Like, you're not going to clean up a crime scene before calling 911 if you are in the state that he claimed to be in. Another piece of evidence that came out during the trial is that Matthew had made some incriminating Google searches before the murder. So one of the searches he had made was, "How loopy does Caridicin make you?" which is the cough syrup that he used. And he is no stranger to this cough syrup and using it as a drug and how it makes you feel. So police thought that maybe the reason he was searching this was actually kind of to back up his story and use it as an excuse, like, oh, you know, am I delusional, or am I having these delusions because of this cough syrup? Is it the cough syrup that's making me loopy? That sort of thing, even though he doesn't need a Google search to tell him that. The court also received multiple letters from like people who knew Matthew, co-workers, that sort of thing, who said that they thought he would do something like this, like they're not surprised. So there were a lot of poor character references as well. And so originally, like, obviously the whole reason this trial took place is because he initially pled not guilty, but with all of this sort of evidence coming out against him, there wasn't really a lot that his defense could argue. Like, it was all stacking up against him. There was nothing they could say. And so he was convinced to take a plea deal where it basically meant that they couldn't pursue the death penalty against him. So on the 5th of October in 2018, the trial came to an end when he took the plea deal and he pled guilty to first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and after sentencing, he delivered an apology, if you could call it that, to Lauren's family, trying to be all like poetic, whatever. Such a douchey way of apologizing too. I also personally share the belief of Lauren's father Dale that he was planning this from the beginning. Maybe not right from when he like DM'd her on Instagram or messaged her on Instagram, but from very early on in their relationship, especially, you know, just because of that caption he made, like, I've found an angel to kill sort of thing, that just screams to me that this is something that he's been looking to do, and he finally found the person. But that is everything for this case. My thoughts truly go out to Lauren's family and her friends. I cannot imagine how hard it would have been to lose such a loving and caring woman. I mean, she seemed like such a wonderful person and she had so much life left to live. She was taken from this world too soon at just 29 years old. Lauren's family also created a fund called Lauren's Light to raise awareness for domestic violence. So if you do want to donate to that, I will leave the link for that in the description down below. But that is everything for this case. That's it from me today. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments because I think it's a really important case to talk about. I think it's really important to make people aware of these domestic violence cases. I know people are aware of domestic violence, but it's important to keep the conversation open because it is such, unfortunately, a common occurrence in our world. But I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.